Welcome to This Week in Rauchbier, the world's most important, long-running, and awarded show dedicated to smoked beer. From the BSG Studios, I'm your host, John Hall, and we're brought to you by Beer Edge. Subscribe to the newsletter at beeredge.com, follow us on social media, listen in to the Beer Edge podcast and the Drink Beer, Think Beer podcast, and help support independent journalism. And don't forget to keep up with This Week in Rauchbier on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Bill and Hagen are busy this week on the brewery packaging line, working on their very real Paco Smokes, which will release on April 4th and includes a Rauch beer, a Rauch Doppelbock, a Graditsky, and a Rauch Weizen. Check out Dovetail on social media or in person to learn more. But fear not, we'll get a brewer's update through Lisa Allen of Heater Allen Brewing in Oregon, and then we'll catch up with Franziska Weyermann on the family business and smoking malts. Jack Hendler of Jack's Abbey in Massachusetts opens up the Smoky Malt mailbag with us, and then Bart Watson is here, as always, to break down the numbers. But first, This Week in Rauchbier is brought to you by BSG Hop Solutions. Meet the latest in the BSG Hop Solutions portfolio, Sativa. Strong expressions of stone fruit, floral, and resinous pine flavors and aroma define this blend, crafted specifically for use in hazy IPA and other hop-forward beers. Sativa is ideal for aroma, whirlpool, and dry hop additions to hazy and juicy IPAs or for any other hoppy styles where a combination of citrus, tropical fruit, and pine aromatics are desired. Go to bsgcraftbrewing.com to learn more or call 1-800-374-2739. All right, as I mentioned at the top of the show, Hagen and Bill are off this week, but I'm thrilled that sitting in the Brewers Smoke Suite this week is Lisa Allen. She works at Heater Allen, which is a family brewery that she is part of the family of in Oregon. And Lisa, first of all, welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
I know this is a great honor for you.
I love smoke beer. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As do we. So you're in the right place. And so your brewery makes some non-smoked beers, which is confusing to me. And we can sort of talk about those if you want. But I'm much more interested in your Rauch beers and what you're doing and what you're finding working. And so I'll lead off, as I do every week, by asking you this question. What's new this week in Rauch beer?
What is new in Rauch beer? Well, I am happy to say that I keep seeing more breweries that are releasing, at least in the Portland area, Rauch Helles, which is great. I actually was able to have fresh off the canning line from Foreland Brewing, that's also in McMinnville.
Yeah. Lunar
Illusion, which is their Rauch Helles, very tasty. And then I know Wayfinder in Portland just canned their Crusher Destroyer, which is their Rauch Bock. So some very tasty Rauch beers coming out right now. I know that we don't have a Rauch beer right now in tank, but we are going to do.
Why
our
are you
Rauch
on the
Helles
show then?
I have to. I love spreading the love of smoke beers, even if I don't, currently have one available.
But are you dreaming about? Are you planning out your next recipe? Is it an ever-present thought in your brewer brain?
Yes, always. I actually have been working on the schedule, and I have our brew day for our Rauch Helles that actually is a collaboration with Wayfinder that we will release probably in July. So still a ways out, but never too early to plan for Rauch beer. So
Oregon
we will see.
Yeah.
Yeah, Oregon. There's lots of breweries that are making delicious smoke beers in the great state of Oregon.
Well, I'm wondering where it ranks, though, because Oregon is known for being a great beer state, and I always think of it as a hop-forward state, but certainly it is known for lagers, and it used to be known for at least one Hefeweizen, which I think is hard to come by these days. Are people walking in to your brewery back when they could, or going to the stores and asking for Rauch beer by name?
You would actually be surprised at how often I do get that question.
I would not
I
be
have
surprised.
gotten multiple calls recently about where to find our Rauchbach, which we are sold out of. And so it's, obviously the demand is there. Need to make more Rauch beers all the time. Always have one available.
When you think about, and this is a serious question, when you think about creating a new Rauch beer, where do you start? Like, how do you construct a recipe?
I kind of think of what the style that I'm going for with the Rauch, what particular, like, if it's a Rauch Bock, if it's a Rauch Helles, if it's going to be more a like Bamberg style, traditional like Märzen, and then I decide based on the style, I decide what percentage smoke I want to put in it, and then build the recipe out from there. The smoke percentage, yeah, I think that with a Rauch beer, that's kind of the best place to start, depending on how smoky you want it, because then you can build the beer from there, obviously. So, yeah.
Is there? I'm always curious about how smoky you want it, because sometimes a light touch can go a long way, and then sometimes it's really just sticking your face in what's left over from campfire a couple of days later, and inhaling deeply. Where's the sweet spot for you?
I like to be, for most of the smoke beers that I make, I try to be, it's going to be at least 20% smoke, and probably no more than like 40%. I do at some point want to make a beer that's 50% smoked malt, but have not done that yet. But yeah, I like a Rauch Helles. I think that, I think people can be afraid of adding too much smoke, but people who don't like smoked beers aren't going to drink it. So you may as well make it decently smoky, because the people who are going to drink it like smoked beers. Like, that's why they're ordering it. So you might as well make it pretty prominent,
I've known you to be thoughtful with beer and food pairings. Are there food dishes that you find play exceptionally well with smoked beers? Like beyond the normal barbecue?
Yes. I think that something that's kind of nice and hearty, like I'm thinking like a Rauch Bock or something would go really nicely with like a stew, a beef stew. Rauch Helles, I kind of think of like a roast chicken be really good with a Rauch Helles. Yeah. Like with some vegetables, some root vegetables, and yeah. Now I'm getting hungry.
No, I am too. Like this whole segment is backfiring on me now, because now I just need to go out and grab a bite for lunch.
Yeah.
I know your brewery is rooted in the traditional, but occasionally likes to swerve outside of the lines. Have you been thinking about some of the other items that have been smoked and added to beer, or different types of wood, or different ways of getting smoked flavor into your beer? Has that sort of crossed your mind, or is that just too far off the beaten smoky path?
I have made a beer with oak smoked wheat actually before. Okay. That was really interesting. And I actually have, I think it would be some of the smaller craft maltsters are kind of making smoked malt with some very interesting woods. And so I think something like that might be interesting to try at some point. I know, I think Skagit has like a white oak smoked barley that they do. So yeah, I've definitely thought about it and probably will at some point hope to do something with something outside the normal Bamberg smoked beechwood malt.
Wonderful. Lisa Allen of Heater Allen Brewing, thanks for telling us what's up this week in Rauchbier.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
This episode is brought to you by BSG. From hops to malt to all of your brewing ingredient needs, go to bsgcraftbrewing.com to learn more or call 1-800-374-2739. In our conversation with Bamberg this week, I'm delighted to welcome Franziska Weyermann. She's the latest generation at the helm of the famed family malt business. From what's happening during the pandemic to what lies ahead, she joined me via Zoom to talk all things smoked malt. As the next generation to lead the business, I think it's important to look back a little bit. And your family name is synonymous with smoked malt around the world. How did the family first start in the malting business?
Yeah, my family has been in malting for over 140 years. It's 142 actually this year. How my family got into malting. So we can trace our roots in Bamberg to the middle of the 15th century. And my family always has been in the business of grain handling. And right up to the point where we started malting, my family, my ancestors, shipped the grain on barges along the river. And then at some point in time, my ancestors thought, okay, we have to have something more. And luckily, my great grandfather, he married a woman who had the sufficient funds because her parents had a pharmacy. And so he told them, guys, I have this great idea. We should roast malt. And at that point, it was not for beer per se, but more coffee in 1879. So it was very popular to have roasted malt as coffee because coffee was so expensive. Mm-hmm. And the roasted malt would become the substitute. So that's what they did first. It was a very makeshift operation. And then he just grew it from literally a roasting drum under a tent to this beautiful place that we have now. And it wasn't always this big. He just year after year, when it was possible, he built new buildings and built additions, and every generation added to it. And I think why our factory, it is beautiful. Why it looks so beautiful is because as we still do, we focus very much on continuity. So we want everything to work seamlessly together from one generation to the other. And we've only worked with 3 architects in our 140-year history. So I think this really shows and this is how we started. And then when my parents took over 35 years ago, so my mother took over from her father, and obviously met my father, which was very lucky for both of them. And they had their first porter in Fredericksburg, Texas. And they said, this is what we really should do. We should focus on getting the specialty malts, high quality specialty malts to the small brewers, and just to make anything very tailored to the small brewer, like the small bags, easy to open, quality that's always the best, and it's always the same quality. So the brewer can really rely on us to be creative with anything else, because we are always there as like the foundation.
Yeah. And
when we started doing this, like other maltsters would tell us, you're absolutely crazy. We're never going to touch like a 55-pound bag. This is insane. Why are you doing this? And I think our story really gives us meaning behind this, because now everybody's doing it. And when we did it, like 1994, 1995, it was insane. And I can still remember when I was a child, we used to hand close the bags. They're like different strings, colors for different malt types. And I can still remember that I used to play with the strings because they're, they would just lie around and like extra. And coming from this and seeing where we are now with like fully automated bagging line and the QR code on the side. And yeah, it's we've come a long way.
Yeah. So I'm having a hard time getting past your great grandfather making coffee or a coffee substitute from smoked malt, only because the lack of caffeine I think is criminal, and
Yeah.
it
Yes.
seems almost cruel these days. But
the thing is that now the malt in the coffee is having a resurgence because so many people are trying to cut out caffeine. And we actually have quite a number of customers who use smoked malt, but also roasted malt for the flavor and the color in their coffee substitute products. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, if the
It's
day
something
comes,
we're not used to. I mean, we live in a society or in a place and time where everything is very available. Like you can just go to the store and get coffee, but in 1879 there's no coffee for the people who are just regular workers. There's no way to achieve to get coffee. So I think it was more about the getting the taste and getting the caffeine that we all really need in this time.
So I want to talk flavor profile of it. It seems like smoked beers are and it's mostly due to this community that we're fostering right now, but is really on the rise, and that people are paying attention to smoked beers in ways that they hadn't before. And a lot of people understand, hops and the flavors of hops and the aromas of hops, and certain malts as well. What do you see as a hallmark, flavor-wise, aroma-wise, of a great smoked malt?
So I love smoked malt. I love it so much. I even did my bachelor's thesis on like the aroma of smoked malt. I think smoked malt is just, of course, you can have it like in your face, Schlenkerla, 95% smoked malt, like biting into a piece of ham. That's the one side. But the other side, I think it can give so much depth to a beer. If you just add like that 1, 2, 3% of smoked malt to a beer, and it's just going to give you like so much depth that you don't know that you have smoked malt in it. But it just, I love smoked malt and I love smoked beer. And I think every smoked malt that is out there has a very different purpose. I mean, if you have like very peated smoked malt, that's just so very intense and it's just not going to give room too much else. But if you have like a beech smoked barley malt from Weyermann, it's very it's very subtle, and the flavors are very round, and it's very smooth in a way, to give you, if you use a high percentage, it's going to give you that punch. But if you just use it as like a little bit of an extra, a little bit of that sea salt in your dish, it's just going to add so much to your beer. And I mean, a lot of German brewers do it too, to just add that little extra.
What do you see as the future of smoked malt? What's on the horizon?
I think smoked malt can go anywhere. I mean, we just talked with my family before we started recording this podcast. My partner said we should do like what's the word? Jesus, geez Louise. cannabis smoked malt, and I said
Ah,
that's a great idea. It's not going to happen in Germany, but there's
probably an audience
literally
for it here. Yeah.
no, yeah, totally. I mean, it's in the US, it's a whole different ball game. But there's no ending. I mean, it ends when you stop at, there's an ending at how much different types of woods there is. But I mean, I can see different, like maybe herbs coming in. I think there's no real stop to it. And we're always constantly experimenting and like seeing different types of woods, what could come next in this whole world of smoke malts. There's always things going on behind the scenes, but I think there's so much to go. Like there's so much variety that can be there in smoked malt. And
what are your major export markets?
For what my major export markets?
Yeah,
so
yes.
The number one is North America. So okay. US, Canada. But then it varies totally. So a lot of it goes to Asia, Eastern Europe. For Brazil is a big market. Italy is a big market. Russia. We go where the beer goes.
Yeah,
we say,
it's worldwide. I love it.
Yeah, it's we do 135 countries, so our life is very colorful, and I think it's amazing. And I love interacting and seeing how the different trends go around the world. And it's a circle, and everything goes full circle, and then it starts again. And I love seeing smoked beer being on the rise.
Well, we do as well. So thank you so much for taking a few minutes and sharing the family story and what's on the horizon. This was really insightful. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. You're very welcome.
It's now time for the Smoked Malt Mailbag, your very real Rauch questions answered by an actual brewer. Assisting us this week in the mailroom is Jack Hendler of Jack's Abbey in Massachusetts. Welcome to the broadcast, Jack.
Thanks for having me.
Now, before we get to the questions, I'm told by my producers that you make a Rauchbier of your own. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So we do have one year-round smoked dark lager called Smoke and Dagger. We do a few smoked beers throughout the year, but Smoke and Daggers are our year-round version.
I love that you make a year-round version. I hope it catches on for you.
Yeah, well, we've been brewing it since we opened nearly 10 years ago, so it's been a mainstay of the brewery ever since.
Amazing. Well, let's get to the questions. The first one comes from a Niles R., and he writes, do you also find that having a Rauchbier at a fire can subdue the smoke of the beer? And then he notes that he's attributed this to his nostrils being filled with the sulfur coming off of the fire itself.
Well, I suppose the answer to this question depends. Are you an Eagle Scout making a fire, or are you some city slicker who's pulling live limbs off of trees and making a really smoky fire? Potentially there's a little similarity in the smoke character coming off a fire versus your beer, but you'll be using different woods than would be in a Rauchbier, and hopefully it's not so smoky that it's filling your nostrils when you make that fire. So potentially, but maybe you need some more work on building a fire.
The show is incredibly popular with Eagle Scouts, so you're speaking to the right audience. Our next question comes from Johan R., and he wants to know, why is peated smoke malt the devil in beer?
Well, I'm going to be even more controversial. I mean, I can't even smell Scotch, and I'm sure everyone's going to be offended by that statement. It's one of those things you learn about these off flavors, and then once you know what that off flavor is, it's tough to come back around and enjoy it, even when it's supposed to be approachable. So I don't know, something with Pete as a brewer, totally turned off by that smell, that burnt plastic. I'm not sure who likes burnt plastic as a smell, but to each their own.
We are actually, our audience is largely comprised of people who enjoy the aromas of burnt plastic, who are also Eagle Scouts. Our next question comes from CJ Louder, and she would like to know why, chemically speaking, do some Rauchbiers taste like meat? What is the meaty element that makes one more bacon-like than another?
Yeah, this gets to the heart of smoked beer and what makes meat taste like barbecue. What makes barbecue taste like barbecue? It's wood. So it's that smoke from burning wood that makes your beer smell the way it is. So in the same way you smoke meat, you're smoking malt in the exact same manner, generally with a different wood, but you're creating smoke. You're then drying your malt over that smoke. It's incorporated into the malt, then it's incorporated into the beer. And it's not any, it's the same exact process as making smoked meat. So that's why they smell the same and have that meat flavor. And depending on what wood and how much smoke you actually incorporate will change the meatiness of that flavor.
Interestingly enough, most of our listeners are actually vegetarians. As we start to wrap up here, our final question comes from G. Scott S., and he would like to know, you as a professional brewer, how do breweries keep up with the crazy increasing demand? He says he can barely get his hands on Rauchbier anymore.
There's like these 10 guys, and they all buy like 10 cases at a time, and then it's sold out, and then no one else gets to enjoy it. So that's sort of what's happening.
I think you need to start like a lotto system then.
I'd love to. I mean, yeah. I mean, talk about an underappreciated style. Maybe he just needs a new marketing tweaks instead of smoke beer, something else that sounds more appealing.
Well, time will only tell. Jack, thanks so much for answering our listener questions and for being a good sport.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
As he does every week, Bart Watson, the chief economist of the Brewers Association, is here with the latest in Rauchbier stats. What you got, numbers jockey?
Well, since we're nearing a year in on the pandemic, I thought it would be interesting to take a full year look and step back at how smoked beers, Rauchbiers have performed over the past year during this COVID era. And I don't think it should be a surprise to anybody who's followed the numbers, but like many styles, people who couldn't get their Rauchbiers on premise flocked to the off premise to buy more packaged Rauchbier. So, looking at the numbers, we see that sales were up about 15% by volume year over year. And of course, everything was up. So, we need to step back and I think we need to put this in share terms. I think that's more appropriate. So Rauchbier increased share within overall beer, moving from 0.0077% to 0.0081%. So,
Wow.
With a growth rate like that, I think we can call it one of the fast movers and something that, really grew during the past year.
When we think of Rauchbier, we're often thinking about lagers or the occasional porter. Is the data showing you that there are other styles that are really taking off and putting their hooks into the market?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this. And, IRI and Nielsen, for some reason, still don't have this as a style. So, to get this, you have to look through all the brands, look for, smoky, smoked, smoking, and all sorts of terms. And so that means you get to see all the brand names. So one of the things I've been looking at recently is, how many different styles have become smoked in recent years. And it's not just porter or amber ales anymore. We're seeing, some different types of stouts, so chocolate stouts that are also smoked. And I thought it was interesting that we're starting to see more IPAs, which makes sense. I mean, IPAs has grown in so many different directions. And it's only natural that, when people are looking to continue that growth, they would consider smoked as, as a natural extension of IPA. And some of those were pretty strong growers last year. So I wouldn't be surprised if smoked IPA is the next IPA variant that really takes off in the U.S.
One of the things that I know we're all very concerned about these days is access and being able to drink our Rauchbier at home. I've been hearing rumors of can shortages out there, which makes me very, very nervous, but also slightly confused since everybody knows that the best Rauch comes from a bottle. What's the breakdown in packaging?
Yeah, I think you're right that traditionally, Rauchs have been served in bottles. But, people want them on the go now. I mean, we're a convenience society, and so cans are often more portable when you want to smoke your beer at the beach or at the golf course. So, we have seen a lot of volume move into the cans. And, one thing I found interesting this year is that that bottles kind of reasserted themselves. So they gained share last year. We saw share go up for bottles by about 1.5 percentage points within overall smoked beers. And, I think this presents, again, an opportunity for brewers. We know that cans are tight some places. I just gave you some of the stats about how, smoked beers are a growth style. So, overlapping those, moving your smoked beer into bottles or moving, into a new smoked beer in bottles might be a growth opportunity that doesn't strain your can supply and allows you, some additional growth going forward.
You're doing the Lord's work, Bart. Thanks for putting in the extra hours to bring us these very real stats, and I'll look forward to talking with you again next week. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Before we go, a reminder that This Week in Rauchbier is brought to you by the Barca line of Weyermann specialty malts. Barca once enjoyed the highest reputation among German brewers and was once the most common barley variety. Weyermann believes in Barca as an all-time great in the history of barley varieties. With its unique qualities, especially for artisanal beers, it will continue to have a home in the portfolio of Weyermann specialty malts for years to come. Available as Barca Pilsner Malt, Barca Vienna Malt, and Barca Munich Malt. Go to bsgcraftbrewing.com to learn more or call 1-800-374-2739. And that, my friends in Rauch, is the end of our show for this week. A reminder to join the Facebook group and to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at TWRauchbier. Thank you as always for tuning in, for your telegrams of support, your willingness to indulge on this first day of April 2021. I'm John Hall, and for now, stay safe, look out for one another, and drink that smoke if you got it. Good night.